I am excited to welcome our distinguished alumni and their guests. One of my initial desires for the association, in addition to providing scholarships for students, was to establish the Distinguished Alumni Program. Now, I have to tell you, I was a career Air Force officer, retired, and came back to the area to be with family. And after my retirement, I taught over at Lewiston Porter, and they had a Distinguished Alumni ceremony. I went to it, and I said, oh, let me check, see who's in the Newfane Distinguished Alumni, and found out we didn't have one. So that's what got into my brain that we needed something. We needed an association to start with, but we also needed to recognize our distinguished alumni. And the reason why it's important to show our current students the great things you can accomplish with a Newfane degree. Our first class in alphabetical order right now is Tom Beilein, the class of 1994, who was in law enforcement. Dr. Brian Hamluk, class of 1994, college administration. Paul Hobbs, who's not able to be with us right now, was the class of 1991. He was a winemaker, and he's represented by his mother and his sister today. Dr. Rebecca Liddell Huppi, class of 1984. These 4 years are getting in here, for cancer research. The late Dr. Jean Gregor Roberts, class of 1971, a musician, and she's represented by her husband, Dr. John Roberts. And Susie Zafrano, class of 1986, a special education teacher who didn't want to leave her students today. She is represented by her husband. So our first inductee today is Dr. Brian Hamluk. Brian is a 1994 graduate, as I mentioned before. Now, I think there's a competition between some of our inductees today of who had the most degrees. So, Brian has a BS in Physical and Health Education from St. Bonaventure University, an MS in Cultural Foundations of Education from Syracuse University, an MA in Education and Human Development from George Washington University, an MTA in Sports Administration from George Washington, a Master of Public Policy and Management from the University of Pittsburgh, and a Doctorate of Education in Higher Education Administration from George Washington University. Dr. Hamluk is the current Vice President for Student Life at the University of Buffalo and leads the departments, units, programs, and services committed to advancing the university experience for 30,000 students. Under his leadership, Student Life provides students with the resources and support needed for academic success, personal growth, career development, leadership, community education, and health and wellness. Prior to joining UB, Dr. Hamluk was Associate Dean of Students and Director of Administration at the University of Pittsburgh. He was a key member of the university's Student Affairs leadership team and assumed a prominent role in the development of the division's strategic goals and initiatives. He also served in administrative roles at George Washington University, Syracuse University, and has worked with students in a variety of settings, including intercollegiate athletics, student development, alcohol and other drug education, and student academic support services. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Brian Hamlin.
Thank you, Lance. Good morning. It's really exciting to be here, and I'm especially honored to receive one of the inaugural Distinguished Alumni Awards here, being back in this school after a few years away. It brings back a lot of great memories here. And throughout my career, I have been asked, how my career began, what influenced me, and I always tell people that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. But my silver spoon was not financial. I had the two greatest advantages that somebody could have. I had parents who cared, and I came from a community and a school district that invested in their youth and invested in their school district and invested in their students' experience. As I mentioned, my parents sacrificed everything for their children. We did not have the fanciest cars, we didn't have the biggest house, we didn't have designer clothes, but I came from parents who really valued education, and they did everything that they could do, not only at the elementary and middle and high school level, but to put us in a position where we were able to go to the college that we wanted to go to, the one that would fit the best for us. And even looking back before that, on our K through 12 experience, there wasn't an event, whether it was an athletic event, a football, basketball, or baseball game, or a chorus concert, a band concert, a leadership activity. I don't remember an event without my parents there. And when you have that advantage to start your life, you're going to be in really good shape. The second advantage that I have, as I mentioned, is I came from a community and a school district that really cared immensely for their young people. I went through this high school from 1990 to 1994, and coming back now, I can see that same care and that same commitment to the students that I had is still here now as I get to meet the new administration and new teachers and the new faculty that are here. When I was going through Newfane actually received the New York State School of Excellence Award, and as I look back on that time, I refer to that time because I experienced it. Newfane had what I call the public school dream team. The superintendent was Charlotte Sawyer, the director of curriculum was Chris Tibbetts, the high school principal was Norm Kopek, and our guidance counselor was George Tripp. And when I look back at the impact that all four of those individuals had on my life, it was really, really special. It was a great time to be going through Newfane. And as I think back to just my class, there's doctors in our class, there are lawyers in our class, there are phenomenal educators and engineers, and all of that started right here because of the commitment that our teachers and our administration and the broader community here had in Newfane. So in closing, I just want to thank everybody for all of their work. Lance and Lara, your entire team, this is a great initiative for Newfane. And I can't wait to see in the years to come all of the other great inductees, because for a small community like Newfane, we have a lot of great people and a lot of wonderful, talented professionals and people who have really made an impact on the community. And while there are 6 this year, you could easily get dozens every year. So to the future committee, you've got tough decisions, and that's a testament to the community that we all grew up in. Thanks so much.
If not, thank you.
I have a question.
One more.
If you could give these guys one piece of advice in their high school career, what would it be?
That's a good question. Really let your teachers and guidance counselors shape you. They've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of students. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do when I was a senior, and at the time, one of the people I mentioned, George Tripp, was our guidance counselor, and he put me on the right path. You just have to listen and be open. And I think if you do that, and that's one of the beauties of a school like Newfane. It's small, the people care, you get a lot of one-on-one attention, and I think if you keep an open mind, the path that you think is the only path for you is definitely not the case. So be open to being educated on different avenues for your life that it can take, because what I ended up doing and going to St. Bonaventure was definitely not on my radar when I was a junior and senior, and it was the best decision, and one thing led to another to GW, and just work with the people who care for you.
All right, thank you.
So in reiteration, it's okay for you not to know what you want to do at 18.
Absolutely okay to know what you not want to do. I work with people who are in their 40s and don't know what they want to do, so you're in good shape. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is okay. The first thing I said to the graduating class, you're probably all sitting out there right now trying to think of what you're going to say to the class when you come back in 2072. And that puts it in perspective of you can't even think that far away right now. And I never thought in 1970 I would be back up here either as a graduation speaker or again honoring some distinguished alumni. Our second educator and distinguished alumni is Susie Zafrano. Susie is a 1986 graduate of Newfane, earned her bachelor's degree from Brockport and master's from Buff State. She has been a teacher for almost 30 years and spent over 17 years volunteering as a coach for Special Olympics. Susie started her career in the inner city of Buffalo, working with elementary-aged children. She has spent the last 22 years teaching at Orleans Niagara Bosse's as a teacher of students with special needs. Throughout her career, she's worked with student populations that many shy away from because it takes an individual with an incredible amount of patience and heart. Teaching is a tireless and often thankless job, but just hearing Susie speak of her students, one can tell that she genuinely cares and wants them to succeed, not just in the class, but in life. Beyond the classroom, Susie has been a Special Olympics coach where she has taken many teams to competitions while instilling the values of teamwork and having fun, not just winning. Now, Susie's not able to be here today, again, because she's a dedicated teacher. Her students like to have a routine, and she did not want to disrupt the routine. So, accepting the award on behalf of Susie is her husband, Michael.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm not a public speaker. I am an alum of Newfane, class of 74. I'm very proud of my wife. I'm sure she is very proud as well. She would have loved to have been here, but as Lance said, she just couldn't peel herself away from her students. It's something that's very important to her, and if it's important to her, then that's the way it is. I just want to thank the Alumni Association for considering her. I'm very proud of her, and our whole family is. Thank you.
So our third recipient is Dr. Jean Gregor Roberts. And Jean pursued her passion for music, which she clearly displayed during her years at Newfane by playing oboe in the band and accompanying chorus performances by playing the piano and singing. Upon graduating in 1971, she attended the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. And most of you know, to get to the Eastman School of Music is a big deal. Further music studies included a Master of Music degree from Yale University School of Music and a Doctorate of Musical Arts degree from the University of Texas at Austin. Jean served as an assistant professor on the faculty at North Greenville College in South Carolina and is an adjunct music professor at Furman University in South Carolina, the West Australian Conservatorium of Music in Perth, Australia, Mercer University in Georgia, Stephen A. Austin State University in Texas, and Concordia College in Minnesota. Jean particularly enjoyed collaborating with students and faculty in recitals and performing 2 piano concerts with her husband John. Her dedication as a church musician grew significantly during her lifetime, serving as an organist, choir director at various churches in her travels. For Jean, church music was an expression of faith through service rather than a profession. Jean passed away on August 16, 2019, and accepting on her behalf is her husband, Dr. John Roberts.
Actually, I'm being joined at the podium by Jean's sister, Lydia, because I felt very much a little bit hampered because I knew her from Eastman School of Music, where I met her. And she became my wife and the mother of my sons. But Lydia is able to give some of that down-home roots, comments, anecdotes from Newfane in particular. So we're going to share comments a little bit back and forth. And first of all, I would like to say what an honor it is to be here. And if Jean were here, she would very, very humbly say thank you to the committee for recognizing her in this manner. It's really special, but it would have been done in a very humble way, I can assure you. Like I said, I professionally got to know her as a sensitive music artist, a performer, a professor of piano, a college colleague for many, many years. And so I found it intriguing to say, well, specifically, what was she like before I knew her at the Eastman School of Music, you know? Well, by the time I had met her, her passion for music was intense, and we grew together and we made each other better in our studies, which is a comment I can return to later. But I thought, well, you know, that scrapbook's been on that shelf for years and years and years. I'm going to go get it down. And it's her scrapbook from her years in Newfane in school. And I wrote down, I thought, you know, all these thoughts in this scrapbook, obviously these thoughts meant a lot to her. They would have what had really mattered to her in her life and for the development in her life. So I have placed specific quotes and information into 4 categories I put into it, just roughly large, broad categories. 1, it's got to be teachers, right? What did some teachers say? 2, I don't know if the administrators are here, but what did the administration do? 3, what was the environment like in the school? And 4, I made it for a broader community comments. So to start these comments, and starting with teachers, I turn to Lydia.
Thank you. I'm Lydia. I'm Jean's older sister. And I would like to say from a teacher, this is what word for word. For outstanding scholarship as well as musicianship, you have been selected to receive this special award, special being in capitals. This year, the award consists of 1 year's membership in the Lockport Concert Association. Membership in the association entitles you to be present to all concerts by the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. You have what it takes to go a long way in music. Keep up the fine work. Another teacher. The long road to the top is full of many disappointments and frustrations. The award pin ensnared within this envelope is a meager recognition of what you have already achieved and of what you are capable of achieving. Be rugged. Climb the highest mountains. From the administration, when Jean was selected as the accompanist for the New York Senior High All-State Chorus at the State Convention in 1970, the Newfane Central School administration supported her participation in the event, and the Newfane principal wrote the following. I am most pleased with the decision of the Board of Education to help defray all expenses that will be incurred by your daughter Jean during her attendance at the New York State School Music Association conference from December 7th to December 10th. You may be sure that the selection of Jean to accompany the All-State Chorus is indeed a great honor and tribute to the ability and dedication of this fine and talented young lady. I am very proud of Jean and happy that she is able to take advantage of this excellent educational opportunity. I wish her great success in this new and exciting experience. So for in school, so you all probably know this, she had opportunities. She played both the bassoon and the oboe in the school band, and she accompanied many performances. She sang in multiple school choirs. She developed invaluable accompanying skills as she performed with the choirs in the junior and senior high school concerts. Lastly, the community. The community of Newfane supported Jean. Here's a quote from the staff at Mount View Hospital. We, the staff of Mount View Hospital Psychiatric Ward, wish to express sincere gratitude for the sing-along which you conducted. The patients and staff enjoyed the program and being able to take part in it. Activities such as the one you conducted are of major benefit to recovery and an important part of our overall program. Thank you for your unselfish donation of time and effort. And lastly, from Calvary Episcopal Church in Williamsville, New York. Jean has been such a valuable person to have around, not just because of her musical abilities, which goes without saying, but because she has endeared herself to so many in the choir who are all very sad that she is leaving us. I personally have a great deal of respect for her abilities. To be sure that they certainly wouldn't get her far without that wonderful human warmth of hers as a real person.
And I think one comment that could be made to the students who are here, that whatever career you go into, it takes a holistic education to bring to that career. And I think Newfane was able to nurture her in many areas, not just in music. And for example, she was an honor society student. She was a strong academic student. She was a good athlete. I found awards in that scrapbook like Outstanding Achievement in Intramural Sports and the Girls Honor Basketball Team Certificate. I think she got one of the first letters for girls from Newfane, and it's still in the scrapbook there, you know. Things like that, athletic interest carried on in her life. She was in tennis competitions and she ran marathons, half marathons her whole life. There's a little bit of that competition, that team sport mentality that went right on into her music as well. Her Newfane education nurtured her such important traits as sufficiency. Self-sufficiency is a big one. Dependability, you're gonna hold a job, and independence. She was strong. She was a determined, progressive thinker and would not have settled for any less than the very best schools to apply to. But it was her hard work that got her scholarships to the Eastman School of Music or the Yale School of Music. And I was always impressed that when she decided to finish her doctorate at the University of Texas, it was for the right reasons. She really, really had a determination and a deep desire to improve herself and her art. And she wanted to improve her musical skills and knowledge. And then she carried on and served and used that in her career. Service, that word service that you brought up is a really big one. And I'm, of course, totally unbiased, you know, as her spouse, but she was a very service-oriented person. Her sense of service was very, very, very strong. Where did that come from? That must have started somewhere early in her life too. Generations of her piano students greatly developed their musicianship skills, their keyboard skills, but they also got a sense of here is a person that gave extra hours, that really cared about them. She was a strong, sensitive musician that collaborated with many exceptional musicians, nationally and internationally. And you didn't stop and count the clock that rehearsal was over with. You stayed and did all those extra hours because you cared about the artist, you cared about the music. She honed her skills as an organist, was mentioned, and always felt that her service to the church was not a job. It was her faith that she was giving to the church. As one who benefited from knowing this remarkable person, I appreciate the fact that Newfane Central High School created an environment that encouraged and nurtured her and brought out the very best in Jean's talent and personality.
As I said, as Jean's sister, we were also best friends. And we had fond memories of our roots, especially our farm experience. We had a small farm. Jean could toss hay bales faster and farther than anyone. She also would regularly win the softball throwing competition. Her music career took her all over the world, but Newfane was always home. And I confess that my work in the Adirondacks keeps me rooted there. If not, I would be back here. Jean shared some of the qualities that our mascot, the Newfane Panther, is known for. She was stealthy, and when she raised her kids, she stepped back from her career for a while and remained in the background until her children were raised. She was a person of great strength, a strong will, and competitive. So the last thing I want to say is be encouraged to pursue your passions and your interests. You just do not know how far and how wide the possibilities are in your future. Just look at what happened to a farm girl from a rural school district in Newfane. Thank you.
Beilein. Tom, as I mentioned earlier, is a 1964 graduate of Newfane, a Vietnam War veteran, and attended Niagara Community College, and had a 40-year career in law enforcement in the Niagara County Sheriff's Office. Deputy Beilein worked as a corrections officer in the jail and on road patrol, was reassigned to the Criminal Investigation Bureau as a senior and chief investigator, and was an inspector for the Criminal Bureau, Welfare Fraud Bureau, Juvenile Aid, and the Drug Task Force. In 1993, he was elected Niagara County Sheriff, where he led a 340-member full-service law enforcement agency responsible for public safety in a region of 270 square miles, responsible for emergency services, correctional services, and civil law enforcement services. Sheriff Beilein was re-elected 3 times and held the position for 14 years. He was appointed chairman of the New York State Commission of Corrections, a regulatory agency responsible for overseeing the New York State prisons, detention facilities, and county jails in 2008. Chairman Beilein holds the distinction of being the only former sheriff to serve as the chair of that commission. So it's my honor at this time to introduce Tom Beilein.
Thank you very much. First off, I'd like to thank the committee for this nomination, and I would like to also congratulate my fellow inductees. Many of you are so well deserving, and when you think about the vast pool of talent that came out of Newfane School, I am truly honored. I am just amazed by this nomination. And I'm not so much amazed as when I told other people that I was nominated, the reaction I got was some eye rolling, because I was not the best student. I freely admit I was not the best student, but Newfane was important to me. And I'm going to go through a list of 4 teachers that really made a difference to me and what I took along many years in a professional way, the advice they gave me. First of all, when people ask me, what did you do at Newfane, I always tell them, I majored in algebra. They said, you majored in algebra? Yeah, I said, I took it for 3 years. So I majored in algebra, and my first interaction after finally passing algebra was moving on to geometry, where I had the pleasure of being taught by this fantastic teacher, Mrs. Roberson, who looked at me and said, Mr. Beilein, I'm not going to teach you geometry for 3 years. We're going to get through this in a year. And lo and behold, we got through it in a year. Next off is words I have always been close to my heart was my biology teacher, who was Mrs. Clark. And like I said, I was not the best student. And she would sit down next to me and say, Mr. Beilein, life is hard, life is difficult, you must learn to adjust. If she said that once during the semester with biology, she said it a dozen times. Those words, I have that thought and that quote has rang true through some very difficult times. Life is hard, life is difficult, we must learn to adjust. There are no truer words ever spoken. Then to move on to my senior year, where I met this incredible teacher, an English teacher, Mrs. Ives, who opened up a whole world to me as far as reading is concerned. And she instilled in me a passion for reading that to this day, I must go through 25, 30 books a year in reading. And one of the first books that I picked up in the library was James Baldwin, Go Tell It on a Mountain. And now remember, this is 1964. James Baldwin was a black author. And James Baldwin was writing about civil rights. And Go Tell It on a Mountain was the story of him growing up in Harlem. And the language in that book was language that I had not heard, but I would hear it often after I left there and went in the Army. I walked into the classroom with the book, proud that I had gotten it out of the library, and Mrs. Ives said, "You can't read that." And took the book and said, "This book is going to be in a special place in the library because of the language in the book." Well, you know I was going to read that book, with which I did. So that it was, Newfane is a special place. This school is a special place. You need to treasure what you have here. You need to treasure your teachers, because right now, what appears to be frivolous turns out so important later in your life. I count the times I had a terrific football coach by the name of Jim Lanchef that just instilled in me a determination to succeed and would not let a person quit. He refused to let you quit. And that was important to me, and I needed that. Because like I said, I wasn't the best student. So I had to have someone tell me, I'm not going to let you quit. And so I went on, and my career ended up, like I've heard before, about finding your passion. I knew I wanted to go in law enforcement. I had been accepted to go to Alfred University. I ended up going in the Army instead and served my time in the Army, and then went right into law enforcement. Was able to use the education that was provided to me from this school by some tremendous teachers. And those teachers are here today, not the same teachers, but the teachers that have that same passion, that want to see you succeed. They want to see you succeed in life. And I would say to you, embrace it. Embrace it with all your heart. Because the worst thing you can do is have a fear of failure. Because I have learned failure is not fatal. Failure is a lesson learned, and it is never fatal. So I would take those words, and as you walk forward in life, take what you learn here at Newfane and give it back to your community. Thank you. I think there's a perception out there that you need to go and major in a criminal justice degree, but law enforcement needs a diverse pool of candidates. And whether it's accounting, it could be any type of degree that gives you a broad spectrum of our society. Obviously, the criminal justice courses help. The juvenile justice courses help. corrections courses help, but in overall, what they're looking for is someone who has a very diverse and a broad knowledge of society. So I would say a degree, a liberal arts degree, a criminal justice degree is fine. An accounting degree is what you would look for. And you know, there's no better place to start than Niagara Community College. So,
Thank you.
okay.
So our next inductee is going to be Dr. Rebecca Liddell Hoppe. And she's a cancer research scientist who graduated in 1984. She earned her BA in biology at the State University of New York at Potsdam and her PhD in developmental biology, teratology, and anatomy at Thomas Jefferson University. She undertook a postdoctoral fellowship at the Kimmel Cancer Center of Thomas Jefferson University and received an American Cancer Society grant to investigate mouse models of developmental and cancer anomalies through mouse positional cloning and transgenic technologies. I won't try to explain what that is. We'll leave that up to Rebecca right now. I can also tell that Rebecca works for the government. I'm a retired Air Force officer, and the use of acronyms goes through our terminology that we use. She has worked at the National Cancer Institute since 1998 after receiving a Cancer Research Training Award, and soon after assumed a staff scientist position in the Laboratory of Genetics and as an instructor of biochemistry for the Foundation for Advanced Education in Sciences. In 2001, Rebecca joined the Cancer Diagnosis Program as a program specialist and continued to serve as a course coordinator for biochemistry at the Advanced Education in Sciences School. In 2006, she moved to the AIDS Cancer Clinical Program and assumed the role of Program Director of Record for two major HIV initiatives, the AIDS Malignancy Consortium and the AIDS and Cancer Specimen Resource. Dr. Hoppe has received 2 NIH, the National Institute of Health Awards, for her work on Sexual and Gender Minority Research Coordinating Committee, and 5 awards of merit for her work on women's health activities, HIV/AIDS malignancy programs, clinical trials stewardship, and affordable cancer technologies research. Let's have a big hand for Dr. Rebecca.
First, I'd like to thank the Alumni Association and Lance for helping us work through all this and doing the logistics for all this. I cannot convey to you what an honor this is, because it comes from my hometown. Oh, I can't believe I'm getting this emotional. This is a school system that guided me from kindergarten through high school graduation. I want to be able to thank my parents. Both were also Newfane High School graduates, and my dad was the valedictorian of his class. And I want to thank my siblings and my extended family who all live in this town. It's because of my family that I could do what I do. And there was never a lack of support or encouragement or just love to get through some of this. And right now, today, the most important part of this is to thank this school system and Newfane. It's hard to know where to begin. What can I say to you guys, you students, sitting here that you can hear and maybe take a nugget of inspiration away from this event? I hear my 13-year-old twin saying, "Stop talking, Mom. Yeah, we get it, Mom." So I thought I'd start with this. I firmly believe that the only difference between me and any of you sitting here is 40 years. That's all. My time at Newfane, moving through the school system, was foundational for me. And it wasn't just about learning how to read and write and the basics of history and civics, math, art, and sciences, and my languages, my French class with Madam K. It's about learning about my community and how to move through a society and figuring out what I needed to take responsibility for. It was about being here in this small, safe environment to begin to try things, to experiment, to fail, and to succeed. And by my senior year, I'd settled into music and drama right in this room, right with a teacher I'm going to talk about later, Mr. Geis. And some of those experiences that brought me, these are some of the experiences that brought me some of the greatest joys that I had in life. But my time at NCS was not defining. I'm not standing here because I'm a famous actress or a famous singer, which was maybe one of my goals. As I said, my education here was foundational, and it was a very strong foundation. And that's the mark of an excellent school system, a system that gives you all the basic tools to begin life exploration and define who you are. Now I'm going to connect some of my teachers with some key things that I think are important. I adored the teacher who taught me how to read in first grade, Miss Anderson. She then gets married and becomes Mrs. Adair, and she teaches me through third grade too. And learning how to read really begins the process of lifelong learning for me. I'm gonna stop here and tell you that I learn from Mrs. Adair every day, still. And that's because she and I have reconnected on Facebook, and we talk almost every day. So that's it. And another amazing thing that you all have that I didn't have. Learning how to read really begins your processes of lifelong learning. I know as you're going through school, you think some days, I cannot wait to hit those doors on the last day of my senior year and be done with all of this. But it doesn't work that way. And that's a good thing. Embrace learning. And I don't mean that sitting in a classroom or on a computer, or for me at a lab bench, are the only ways that learning happens. Learning happens when you are open to it, open to exploring new things, willing to risk failing, and giving yourself and others grace when those inevitable mistakes happen. Be flexible, be willing to change paths, be willing to let situations and sometimes people go, especially when they become unhealthy for you. Then there were Mr. Lowe and Mr. Geis. They provided the platform of joy for me. They directed the plays and the musicals that gave me a place to excel and be part of something. Mr. Geis drove us in the short bus all over New York State to give us the opportunity for our swing choir to perform for his hometown and participate in regional and state courses. To this day, it is overwhelming to realize that they gave so much to us as students so that we could pursue something that we loved. Be sure to find something in life that you love. And find people in your world that will support you in doing the things that you love, that bring you joy. And finally, teachers like Mr. Smith, Mr. Ames, that aforementioned Madam Kay, Mr. Marchioni, Mrs. Price, Miss Farrington, all my teachers, really, all my teachers. The people who dedicated their lives to better our lives, to teach us, to nurture us. Teachers who invested in me when I was not at my best. Teachers who yelled at me. Teachers who sent me to the office. Teachers who sat with me after school to help me catch up on work I missed because I'd been at chorus events across the state with Mr. Geis. What all these teachers showed me was their commitment to serving our community, to making our world a better place. And I learned that lesson, and I hope you do too. So I want to convey another story, and I don't want to do it to put down a guidance counselor that I happen to have, but to emphasize what I said before, that Newfane was foundational for me, but it was not defining. I was attending a counseling session to map out classes that I was going to be taking for the next 4 years in high school. I can't remember when that happens, but just thinking about trying to map out 4 years of high school and the growth that happens in that period, it seems a little crazy to me now. But at the time, I had selected chemistry and calculus, but I was also trying to work on penciling in chorus and swing choir, and at the time, you had to be selected for swing choir. And you didn't know in 7th or 8th grade when we're setting these 4 years out whether you could be part of those choruses and swing choir. So apparently, as we're working 4 years ahead, there were schedule conflicts. So the first comment to me from the guidance counselor was, drop chemistry. You'll never use it again in your life. Well, as you heard, I have a PhD in the sciences. Chemistry is an everyday element of my professional life, and I coordinated and taught a graduate level biochemistry course. The second comment was, why do you think you should take calculus? You're not smart enough to take calculus. You are not smart enough to take calculus. I took calculus and started my college years as a math major until I realized my true abilities in the biological sciences. Don't necessarily let the people around you through these years attempt to define who you are. You have plenty of time to work from this strong foundation to define who you are yourself. One more thing. Everything was not rosy. There were hard days. Very, very hard days at NCS for me. Days I felt alone in a sea of kids in the hall. I've got my really, really good friend Mary standing here, or sitting here. And I wonder if she felt the same way. Okay. Yeah. Days I was abused by my peers. Days I certainly wasn't kind to others. But NCS was foundational. It was not defining. I'm hoping that if there's a student sitting in here today that feels like they don't fit in, or these just weren't the best years of their life, that's okay too. I hope there's that one teacher or one adult in this building that you can rely on. I hope there is one classroom that brings you joy. I hope there's one activity that helps you to bring your best to the school or our community. Because I hope that Newfane has provided you, too, with a foundation that will enable you to find your best, most authentic self over the next 40 years. And I look forward to seeing what the world holds for you. Thank you.
All right, our final inductee is Paul Hobbs. Paul Hobbs is a world-renowned winemaker. In 2013, Forbes magazine referred to Hobbs as the Steve Jobs of wine. He has been twice named Wine Personality of the Year by Robert Parker of the Wine Advocate. Over his 40-plus year career, Hobbs has received more than 10 100-point scores across his portfolio, a rare feat that places him in the top echelon of the world's winemakers. He graduated from Newfane in 1971, earned his BS in chemistry from the University of Notre Dame in 1975, and an MS in viticulture and enology from the University of California, Davis in 78. Regarded as an international visionary for his accomplishments in the vineyard and winery, Hobbs combines his childhood roots on the family farm in western New York with an innovative scientific approach to refine the art of winemaking. He is recognized across the globe for breaking with tradition and forging new paths in the pursuit of excellence, both in the stewardship of the land and the crafting of wines that represent the purest concept of place, leading the way in the early 90s as a pioneer of site-specific vineyard-designate wines. Robert Parks notes that Paul Hobbs is like a good truffle hunting dog when it comes to finding great vineyards. In 1979, he was appointed a member of the inaugural Opus One winemaking team joint venture between California-based Robert Mondavi Winery and the Chateau Mouton Rothschild of Bordeaux. And I probably butchered some names there. Later, a first trip to Argentina in 1988 marked the beginning of what today has become a highly consequential South African winemaking career. Prominently featured amongst The Vineyard at the End of the World, Maverick Winemakers, and the Rebirth of Malbec. Hobbs is recognized for his legendary status as the pioneer winemaker who played the leading role in launching the variety's rise to fame. Today, Hobbs is owner and vintner for 8 wineries around the world, including his Paul Hobbs in California, Hillock and Hobbs in the Finger Lakes, Vina Cobos in Argentina, Crocus in France, and also I'm not going to pronounce the one, something Hobbs in Armenia, and another one in Galatia. He is not able to be with us today because of the business, but his sister Mary Ann and his mother are here today to represent him. So what she's going to do, some of the teachers had asked different questions, and Paul filled in a lot of them, but we also have a video that we're going to show up here. So we just need, you want the video first?
I want to do this first because
Okay.
my cell phone is low on battery.
Need the charger.
Yes, I didn't bring it though, so my mistake. Hi everybody, I'm here with my mom, Joan Hobbs, longtime members of the local community. I graduated in 1984 with Dr. Rebecca, as we knew her, it was Becky Liddell. And so it's so wonderful to see you again, Becky, and it's good to be in the school system, everyone. And back at my roots, I've come back to take care of my mom and to be with her. So the teachers in this high school have compiled some pertinent questions, and they sent them out to the inductees to answer them. And Paul has responded, and I will read you what he wrote. And then we have at least one video. It's very short, and possibly another if we can get it. So I'll get started. The first question from the teachers in the high school. What was your high school experience like? Paul Hobbs answered, I felt extremely engaged and well-grounded in high school for what I had time to be part of. It was a very fulfilling experience, helped by my wonderfully active and supportive home life. The next question. What subjects did you enjoy? My brother answers, math, especially trig, the sciences, English lit, history, everything but French. Yet I adored Madam K. What a sweetheart. We agree, we concur. What extracurriculars were you involved with? He answers, none. Homeworking on the farm was my extracurricular. What subjects best prepared you for your college and what you are doing now? Scientific pragmatism, mathematics, and a solid education in world history, peoples, religions, etc. Now he gives a nod to Jean here, your sister and your wife. He says Jean Greig was China and I was Russia. We were constantly intellectually battling each other from these respective ideologies, and especially reading and writing. Ironically, I was clueless at the time. Being a sitting member of the high school band proved to contain great lifelong lessons and unexpected joys too. What was the college experience like? He said tough. Tough first year till I got the hang of it, academically and socially. Then it was pretty great. Though to be fully candid, I was not the best student as I wasn't always excited by what I was required to study. Some things did not interest me at all. I wanted to have a freer hand to write my own curriculum, but that wasn't in the cards. Also, I was anxious to be out in the world doing things I was passionate about, and that seems to be a theme. If you've missed the other 4 inductees this morning, these last 2, I do believe, have touched on passion, and certainly the first 4, following your dreams, what's in your heart. That seems to be a recurring theme for these inductees. What is one thing you wish you knew about college before you actually arrived? He says, I wish I had a richer exposure, understanding as what the college experience would be like. Perhaps some shadowing would have helped, rather than the cold turkey, naivete, sink or swim, initial immersion I found a bit overwhelming. What choices led you to where you are now? Only few were monumental. Most were incremental, and some were not choices at all, rather than situations you were thrown into. Some of these, at first glance, struck me as nothing but attractive. Struck me as anything but attractive. They proved to be brilliant. Regarding your career, what is the best career advice you have ever received? Once again, he goes back to the theme. Follow your heart, your passion. Listen and ask questions. What advice would you give your younger self when you first started your career? Be more outgoing, less opinionated, and especially, and less full of oneself, which was really a guise to hide insecurities. Not to feel the need to be the top dog at everything I chose to associate myself with. Had it been less of all those things, I would have taken advantage of many opportunities I foolishly said no to. Future, do you have any additional ambitions? What are you doing to attain them? More time with my family, traveling, and sharing moments together. And those are his responses to all of the questions that the teachers in this high school compiled.